Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. William Carver adjusted his watch an old Timex, reliable and unassuming as he followed his wife through the glass doors of the Aspen Lounge. Afternoon sunlight streamed through floor-length windows, casting Denver's skyline in a soft glow. Around them, Easter brunch was in full swing. Champagne flutes clinked, silverware tapped against fine china, and laughter bubbled up from tables of well-dressed patrons. "Try not to embarrass me today," Margaret whispered, not bothering to look back at him. Her perfume, something French and expensive, lingered in her wake. William nodded, though she wasn't watching. In 8 years of marriage, he'd mastered the art of silent agreement. Today, he wore what Margaret called his least offensive outfit, a charcoal button-down and dark jeans. No designer labels, just clean lines and quality materials. His wife, by contrast, had spent 3 hours preparing, emerging in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "There they are," Margaret said, voice suddenly bright as sunshine. She waved across the room, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. "Laurel, over here." William spotted them at a corner table. Laurel Jenkins, phone already in hand as if surgically attached. Brielle Vaughn, Margaret's younger sister, raising a tentative hand in greeting, and a broad-shouldered man William hadn't expected to see. "Deshawn," William said, genuinely pleased as they approached the table. In the flesh, Deshawn Calder stood, extending a hand that William clasped with both of his. "Thought I'd crash the fancy people party." Margaret's smile tightened. "Brielle invited him," she said, as if that explained the breach in her social planning. "Apparently, they've been dating 3 months now," Brielle said, a quiet defiance in her voice. William felt something loosen in his chest. Deshawn was solid ground in shifting sand. They'd served together, encrypted communications side by side in desert dust, trusted each other with their lives. Now Deshawn owned a motorcycle garage downtown, honest work that Margaret dismissed as playing with toys. "Good to see you, man," William said, meaning IT, as they settled into their seats. William strategically positioned himself beside Deshawn, leaving Margaret to sit between Laurel and Brielle. A server appeared immediately, offering mimosas. Margaret accepted. William requested plain water. "Still not drinking?" Laurel asked, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised. "God, I could never give up my wine. My followers would revolt." "Speaking of which," she angled her phone toward Margaret. "We need content. The lighting is perfect." Margaret immediately shifted into pose mode, head tilted, smile calculated. "Tag me in everything," she instructed. "I'm building the spring collection narrative." William watched as his wife transformed into someone he barely recognized, a persona crafted for likes and engagements. Margaret Vaughn Carver, lifestyle curator and aspiration architect, as her bio claimed. Sometimes he wondered if the Margaret he'd married still existed underneath the filters and captions. "So, Deshawn," William said, turning away from the impromptu photo shoot. "How's business?" Deshawn grinned. "Can't complain. Just got a contract customizing rides for that new action movie they're filming downtown." "That's fantastic," William said. "Those are the connections that matter." Speaking of connections, Margaret cut in, suddenly attentive to their conversation. "You'll never guess who I ran into at Eliza's charity gala last weekend." She didn't wait for anyone to guess. "Thomas Reynolds, yes, the Thomas Reynolds Venture Capital at Highline Partners. He's investing in a new social commerce platform that's going to revolutionize how influence converts to sales." Laurel gasped appropriately. "You didn't." "I did," Margaret preened. "And he's invited us to his lake house next month." Apparently, he remembers William from some tech conference. William kept his face neutral. "I've never met Thomas Reynolds." Margaret waved a dismissive hand. "Well, he knows who you are. That little software thing you did." "Valkyrie Systems," William said quietly. The little software thing she referred to was the public face of his operation, a modest B2B solutions provider that served as the perfect cover. "Whatever," Margaret said. "The point is, we're in. Do you understand what this means for my brand partnerships?" Laurel, I could introduce you. That would be amazing, Laurel gushed. I've been looking for investors for my wellness line. Wellness line? Deshawn asked, forking a piece of steak. Like vitamins? Laurel looked at him as if he'd spoken an alien tongue. It's a lifestyle ecosystem. Supplements, guided meditations, alignment coaching. Sounds interesting, Brielle said, the diplomatic teacher in her showing. It's more than interesting, Margaret said sharply. It's a multi-million-dollar industry. Not everyone wants to stay small forever. She shot a pointed look at William. Some of us have vision. William took a slow sip of water. Around them, the restaurant hummed with comfortable wealth couples and designer wear, groups celebrating with $200 bottles of champagne. This was Margaret's natural habitat now. She'd adapted completely, evolved for this environment, while he remained stubbornly unchanged. Speaking of vision, Laurel said, scrolling through her phone, have you seen the new Verlaine collection? The wait list is insane, but Margaret's stylist might be able to pull some strings. I couldn't justify spending that much on a handbag, Brielle said. That's because you think like a teacher, Margaret replied, her voice sweet but edged. You have to invest in quality pieces that appreciate. Handbags don't appreciate, William said, breaking his silence. They depreciate the moment you walk out of the store. If you want appreciation, put that money in index funds. Compound interest outperforms fashion every time. The table fell silent. Margaret's eyes flashed dangerously. Not everything is about financial return, William, she said. Some things are about connections, impressions. The doors that open when you present yourself correctly. Doors only matter if there's something of substance behind them. William countered. Margaret's laugh was sharp, brittle. Oh, that's rich coming from you. What substance are you hiding in those generic clothes and that dinosaur of a car? You know what your problem is. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that somehow cut through the ambient noise. You're too poor for this circle, William. I can't waste my prime on a man with a basement mindset. Laurel snickered, phone already out to capture whatever came next. Brielle stared at her plate, shoulders tense. Deshawn's hand curled into a fist beside his water glass. William felt a strange calm settle over him. He'd seen this moment coming for years, watched it approach like a slow-motion train wreck. Now that it had arrived, he felt nothing but clarity as he stood up, napkin placed precisely beside his untouched plate of food. Enjoy your brunch, he said simply, then turned and walked away. Behind him, he heard Margaret's indignant William, followed by hurried whispers. He didn't look back. The maitre d' nodded respectfully as he passed. Outside, spring sunlight hit his face like truth, clean and unfiltered. William waited in the car, engine running quietly as Margaret stormed out 15 minutes later. She yanked open the passenger door of his modestly priced sedan and threw herself into the seat. What the hell was that? She demanded, slamming the door. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. William put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. Denver traffic flowed around them. Normal Sunday drivers unaware of the Cold War in his vehicle. I walked away from a situation, he said evenly. That's all. That's all. Margaret's voice rose an octave. You left me sitting there after I just told everyone about the Reynolds connection. Do you have any idea how that makes me look? William navigated a turn, hands steady at 10 and 2. You seem to be enjoying yourself. Oh my God. Margaret pressed manicured fingers to her temples. This is exactly why we can't move forward. You have zero social intelligence. Zero. Do you know what Laurel's husband does? He's a VP at Meridian. He makes 7 figures, William. 7. And look at what you're driving this economy car. It's humiliating. William stopped at a red light, watching pedestrians cross the street, a father holding his daughter's hand, pointing at something in a store window. My clothes, my car, my little company, Margaret continued, making air quotes. Everything about you screams mediocrity. And you wonder why I'm frustrated? I have worked too hard to let you drag me down with this fake humility act. The light turned green. William accelerated smoothly. And if you think I'm going to apologize for speaking the truth, you're delusional, she said, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. Someone needed to give you a wake-up call. If you had any ambition at all, you'd be grateful. They drove in silence for several blocks. Downtown Denver gave way to quieter neighborhoods. Trees lined the streets, new spring leaves unfurling in the April warmth. "You know what?" Margaret said suddenly. "I think we need to seriously re-evaluate this marriage. I'm reaching a critical point in my career. I can't be held back by someone who's satisfied with whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at William. "Maybe we should talk to lawyers." William slowed the car, turning onto their street, a quiet row of upscale homes with manicured lawns. Not the most exclusive address in Denver, but comfortable. Their house sat in the middle of the block, white with black shutters. Margaret had wanted something more distinctive, but William had insisted on this one 5 years ago. Location, good bones, appreciation potential. He pulled into the driveway, but didn't turn off the engine. "Well," Margaret said, hand on the door handle. "Aren't you coming in?" William looked at her, really looked at her. The woman he'd married had been ambitious, but genuine. Somewhere along the way, she'd become someone else entirely. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think I am." Margaret's perfectly lined eyes widened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means enjoy the house," William said. "I'll be in touch." "William, don't be ridiculous," Margaret huffed. "Where are you even going to go?" He didn't answer. After a moment of tense silence, she got out, slammed the door, and stalked up the walkway. William waited until she was inside before backing out of the driveway. He drove across town, taking side streets to avoid traffic, mind clear and focused. The confrontation at brunch had crystallized something he'd been feeling for months, years, even. It wasn't just that Margaret had changed. It was that he'd allowed himself to be diminished to maintain peace. That ended today. 40 minutes later, he pulled up behind an industrial brick building in a transitioning neighborhood. Calder Custom Cycles read the weathered sign above roll-up garage doors. William parked, noting the pristine motorcycles displayed in the front window, Deshawn's craftsmanship evident in every chrome detail. He punched in a code on the side door and climbed a narrow staircase to the second floor. The space above the garage was Spartan. Concrete floors, exposed brick walls, windows looking out over the city. A far cry from the designer furniture and curated art pieces of his home with Margaret. William walked to a blank section of wall and pressed his palm against a seemingly ordinary brick. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a state-of-the-art laptop secured in a custom housing. He removed it, carried it to a simple metal desk, and opened the lid. The screen glowed to life, requesting biometric authentication. William placed his thumb on the scanner and looked into the camera for retinal verification. Seconds later, he was accessing the real core of his work. The interface was sleek, minimal, displaying multiple secure communications channels, project status updates, and financial reports that would make Margaret's eyes bulge if she ever saw them. Contracts with government agencies, security protocols for critical infrastructure, cutting-edge defense systems that protected nations from digital warfare. This was the truth behind the modest facade, a global cybersecurity operation with William at its center, deliberately kept hidden from the world, and especially from his wife, that a notification pinged. Deshawn was on his way up. William minimized several windows, but left the system running. He'd known his friend would follow as soon as he could extract himself from brunch. The door opened, and Deshawn stepped in, still wearing his Sunday best dark jeans and a button-down that stretched across his shoulders. "That was quite an exit," Deshawn said, closing the door behind him. "You okay?" William leaned back in his chair. "Better than I've been in years." Deshawn nodded, understanding without needing elaboration. He walked to a small refrigerator in the corner, pulled out 2 bottles of water, and handed one to William. "So what's the plan?" he asked, settling into his second chair. "Because that woman just declared war on you, whether she knows it or not." William took a slow drink of water, then set the bottle down with precision. "I think it's time we reminded the world who I really am." The desert night was cold, stars piercing through darkness with brutal clarity. William sat cross-legged in his tent, the blue glow of a laptop illuminating his face. Around him, the forward operating base hummed with subdued activity generators, distant voices, the occasional thump of artillery far on the horizon. "You still at it?" Deshawn ducked through the tent flap, bringing the smell of dust and coffee. Man, you need to sleep sometime. William didn't look up from the screen. Almost done with this encryption sequence. If it works, we'll intercept their communications before they even know we're listening. Deshawn passed him a steaming cup. Command's gonna promote you if you keep this up. Don't want a promotion, William muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. Just want this to work. On screen, lines of code resolved into a functioning protocol elegantly simple, yet virtually unbreakable. William had been working on it for weeks, stealing hours between missions, refining algorithms while other soldiers played cards or wrote letters home. There, he said finally, saving the file to an encrypted drive. Version 1.0 of Valkyrie. Deshawn peered over his shoulder. Valkyrie, huh? Like the warrior women who choose who lives and dies. William nodded. They see everything on the battlefield. That's what this does, sees everything without being seen. He'd started the project as a solution to a specific field problem. Taliban insurgents were using rudimentary but effective encryption to coordinate attacks. William's program could crack their codes while remaining undetectable, a ghost in their system. You know what this is worth back home? Deshawn asked quietly. William closed the laptop. It's not for sale. Not saying it should be. Deshawn held up his hands. Just saying your brain is going to be worth a lot more than combat pay when we get out. William sipped the bitter coffee, considering. He'd enlisted after college, driven by a sense of purpose rather than patriotism. The military had given him structure, discipline, and a sandbox to test his skills against real-world problems. But he was building something bigger than a military application. I've got plans, he admitted. Been putting aside most of my pay. When we get back, I'm going to develop this commercially. Security architecture for civilian infrastructure. Count me in, Deshawn said without hesitation. Whatever you need. The tent canvas flapped in a sudden gust of wind, sending sand skittering across the floor. First, we need to survive this deployment, William said. The memory dissolved, replaced by another. William in a cramped studio apartment, 2 years after discharge. 3 monitors dominated a desk that took up half the living space. Empty takeout containers and energy drink cans littered every surface. He hadn't slept in 36 hours that on screen, his fledgling company Valkyrie Systems had just secured its first major client. A regional bank, nothing flashy, but they'd chosen his security solution over established competitors. The deposit notification showed $42,000 more money than he'd seen at once in his life. William leaned back in his chair, rubbing bloodshot eyes. The work was solid. He'd personally built every component, tested every vulnerability. This was just the beginning. His phone buzzed with a text from Deshawn. Heard back from that investor. Wants to meet tomorrow. William frowned. He'd been hesitant about seeking outside funding, wary of ceding control. But he needed capital to scale, to hire, to compete with bigger firms. With a sigh, he texted back, set it up. The next memory, a sleek downtown office. William, in an ill-fitting suit borrowed from Deshawn, sat across from Margaret Vaughn, then a junior investment analyst at a boutique firm specializing in tech startups. Your security protocol is impressive, she said, reviewing his documentation. But your business plan lacks vision. You're thinking too small. William studied her sharp, hungry, beautiful in a deliberate way. I prefer sustainable growth to flashy promises. In this market, perception drives investment, she countered. You need to position yourself as the next unicorn, even if your actual strategy is more conservative. That sounds like lying, William said bluntly. Margaret laughed, a sound that was surprisingly warm. It's storytelling. Big difference. She closed his folder. Look, my firm isn't going to back you. You're too early stage for their appetite. But I might have some personal capital I could invest. Why would you do that? Because I see potential, she said, looking at him with unexpected intensity. Not just in the technology, but in you. You're different from most founders I meet. Grounded. Authentic. She tapped his business plan. You just need someone to help you play the game. William considered her offer. He needed the money. And something about her directness appealed to him. What terms are you thinking? Let's discuss it over dinner, Margaret suggested. Somewhere nice. I know just the place. The memory shifted again. 1 year later, William in Margaret's high-rise apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. They'd gotten married after a whirlwind courtship, a calculated risk, he'd thought at the time. She understood ambition, had connections he needed, and seemed to value his methodical approach as a counterbalance to her more aggressive instincts. "We should buy a house," Margaret was saying, unpacking designer clothes into a walk-in closet. "Something with character, in Country Club or Cherry Creek." "Those neighborhoods are overvalued," William replied. "We'd be better off somewhere with appreciation potential." "Money isn't everything, William," she'd laughed. "Location and status matter in this city." It was the first time he'd heard that refrain, the first hint of the divide that would eventually crack their foundation. But back then, he'd compromised, believing in the partnership they were building. What he hadn't told her, what he'd never told her, was about Valkyrie Core. While Valkyrie Systems grew slowly, deliberately public-facing, he'd been developing its shadow twin. Core was where the real innovation happened, secured behind firewalls and NDAs and shell companies. Government contracts started coming in during their second year of marriage. Consulting positions with three-letter agencies. Security protocols for infrastructure that couldn't afford to fail. William kept it all separate from the life he shared with Margaret, watching with a strategist's eye as she became increasingly obsessed with appearances, connections, the external trappings of success. The memories faded, bringing William back to the present, the sparse office above Deshawn's garage, the secure laptop, the decision point that Deshawn was watching him, waiting. "She has no idea, does she?" he asked finally. "About any of this? About who you really are?" William shook his head. "I kept it separate for security reasons at first. It just became easier that way. She was building her brand. I was building something else. And now," William turned to the computer, pulled up a secure messaging platform, and typed a brief message to an unlisted contact. "Initiate protocol disclosure. Authorization Carver, Alpha 9. He hit send, then looked up at his oldest friend. Now we play the long game. 3 days after Easter brunch, William vanished from his life with Margaret. He didn't take clothes or personal effects, didn't empty bank accounts or leave notes. Simply disappeared between her morning Pilates class and afternoon coffee meeting. When Margaret returned home, she found his car in the garage, but no trace of him in the house. Calls went straight to voicemail. Text delivered but remained unread. By evening, annoyance had shifted to confusion, then to a carefully curated concern she posted about on social media. "Sometimes the people closest to us hide their struggles. Checking in on my mental health as I navigate a difficult personal situation. Hashtag transparency is strength. Hashtag checking your people." William watched it all unfold from a penthouse suite at the Four Seasons downtown. He'd chosen the location strategically. Margaret would never think to look for him somewhere so ostentatiously luxurious. From here, he could implement the first phase of his plan while keeping tabs on her reaction. "Your wife has filed a missing persons report," Marla Trent said, not looking up from her tablet as she entered the suite. She wore a tailored black suit, her silver hair cut in a precise bob. "Denver PD contacted me about an hour ago." "Right on schedule," William replied, pouring coffee into a hotel mug. "Want some?" "No, I don't consume anything during client meetings." Marla settled into a chair, crossing ankle over knee. "It dulls the edge." William had hired Marla 3 years ago to quietly handle Valkyrie Core's most sensitive legal matters. She was ruthlessly effective, exorbitantly expensive, and pathologically discreet, exactly what he needed. "Walk me through what you've done so far," she said, pulling up a document on her tablet. William sat across from her. "Assets are secure. Everything's been transferred to the protected entities we established. Properties, investments, accounts all under the trusts and LLCs, none in my personal name. And the house, technically owned by Valkyrie Holdings. Margaret never bothered to read the paperwork when we bought it. She's been living in a company property for 5 years without realizing it." Marla made a note. "You realize she'll claim she's entitled to half of everything." "Let her try," William said, voice calm. "There's nothing legally connecting me to Valkyrie Core. On paper, I'm a mid-level developer at a modest B2B software company with a reasonable salary and modest savings. And when she discovers the deception, William looked out at the Denver skyline, glass and steel catching the afternoon light. That's not deception. That's security compartmentalization. Marla almost smiled, a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. I've worked with dozens of tech founders, William. Most of them are either idealists who get eaten alive or sharks who destroy themselves with greed. You're something else entirely. I'm a strategist, William said simply. I see patterns, anticipate moves, position assets accordingly. And Margaret? Was she an asset or a liability? William's expression didn't change, but something tightened around his eyes. She was my wife. I respected that commitment until she made it clear she didn't. Marla set down her tablet. The police will conclude you left voluntarily. No evidence of foul play, no suspicious financial activity they can detect. But Margaret will hire divorce attorneys within the week. They'll press for emergency spousal support, claiming you've hidden assets. Let them file. You know what to do. Marla nodded. I've already prepared motions to quash any emergency petitions. We'll force standard discovery timelines. Meanwhile, my investigators will document her spending, her social posts, her new relationship. New relationship? William raised an eyebrow. Give it 2 weeks, Marla said confidently. A woman like that doesn't stay unattached when her image is at stake. And when she moves on, we'll be watching. William's phone pinged with a notification. He checked the screen, then set it face down. Deshawn's team has completed the office transition. Valkyrie Core is now officially headquartered in the new downtown location. Excellent. And Valkyrie Systems will file for bankruptcy protection next month. Regrettable market conditions, increased competition, very ordinary business failure. Marla stood, smoothing her already immaculate suit. I'll handle the police inquiry. You should stay here at least through the weekend, maintain the digital silence. Once the initial drama subsides, we move to phase 2. William walked her to the door. You're worth every penny, Marla. I know, she said, then hesitated. One more thing. Your sister-in-law called my office. Brielle said she needed to speak with you about Margaret. William frowned. Did she say why? No, but she didn't sound hostile. Perhaps a potential ally. Follow up discreetly, William said. Brielle's always been the sensible one. After Marla left, William returned to the window, gazing out at the city as evening fell. Lights flickered on across the urban landscape, each one a life, a story, a node in an intricate network. He'd built his career mapping and securing such networks, identifying vulnerabilities before they could be exploited. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd secured everything except his own marriage. His phone buzzed again, a news alert. He picked it up, reading the notification with interest. Tech billionaire Ari Maddox relocates to Denver, cites growing tech hub potential. Right on time. Another piece moving into position. 2 weeks passed. Margaret's carefully curated sympathy posts about William's abandonment gained traction in her social circles. She hired a top divorce attorney, gave an exclusive interview to a local lifestyle magazine about starting over, and began appearing at events with a new accessory. Ari Maddox, crypto entrepreneur and recently arrived Denver tech celebrity. William watched it all unfold from his command center, now relocated to a secured floor of a downtown office building. He'd emerged from his strategic disappearance, making minimal public appearances while Marla's team managed the legal front. As predicted, Margaret's attorneys had filed emergency motions for asset disclosure and temporary support, all denied by the courts based on Marla's counterfilings. She's escalating, Deshawn said, pointing to the bank of monitors that tracked Margaret's social media activity. Look at this. William examined the latest post. Margaret and Ari, champagne glasses raised at what appeared to be an exclusive club opening. Her caption read, "When you upgrade your life, the right people appear. Some endings are really beginnings." Hashtag level up, hashtag worth more subtle, William remarked. She's going to be furious when she figures out who Ari really is, Deshawn said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Ari Maddox, born Andrew Moxley, was not actually a crypto billionaire. He He was a struggling actor from Williams' cybersecurity network, hired to play a very specific role. Margaret's perfect match. Confident, connected, flashy with money, and completely fabricated. She won't figure it out, Williams said. Margaret sees what she wants to see. Always has. His phone rang Brielle's number. He'd spoken with her twice since Easter. Brief conversations where she'd expressed concern about Margaret's behavior, but stopped short of outright condemnation of her sister. Brielle, he answered. Everything okay? Not really, she said, voice tight. I just left Margaret's place. She's out of control, William. She and Laurel are planning some kind of reality show pilot about recovering from relationship trauma and finding your value. They want me to participate. William moved to a quiet corner of the office. And you don't want to? It's exploitation, Brielle said flatly. They're using your marriage as content. Laurel kept pushing me to say negative things about you on camera. When I refused, Margaret went ballistic. Said I was sabotaging her narrative and that I needed to get with the program or get out of her life. William pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. I'm not in the middle, Brielle said, surprising him. I'm on the side of truth. Margaret she's not the sister I grew up with anymore. Everything's about image and status and who can do what for her. That's been my reality for years, William said quietly to a long pause. Then, can we meet somewhere? There are things you should know. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe the following afternoon. William knew it was potentially risky. Margaret had people watching him, but Brielle's insight could be valuable. Besides, he genuinely cared for his sister-in-law, one of the few honest people in Margaret's orbit. After ending the call, William returned to the monitors. Another notification. Margaret had just been approved for membership at House of Leave, the exclusive social club she'd been trying to join for years. The timing wasn't coincidental. William had anonymously purchased a significant ownership stake in the club 3 days earlier, instructing management to fast-track Margaret's previously denied application. Why give her what she wants? Deshawn had questioned when William executed the transfer. We're not giving, William had explained. We're positioning. The higher she climbs on her own illusion, the farther she'll have to fall. Now, watching her celebratory post about her House of Leave acceptance, William felt no satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth stripping away the facades, ending the performance. The next afternoon, he arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, choosing a table with a clear view of both entrances. Habit from military days. Always know your exits. Brielle arrived punctually, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, a stark contrast to Margaret's increasingly elaborate styling. She spotted him immediately, weaving through tables with determined steps. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Of course, William replied. You sounded concerned yesterday. Brielle ordered tea when the server approached, waiting until they were alone again before speaking. This guy she's seeing, she began. Ari, something's off about him. William kept his expression neutral. How so? His stories don't add up. He talks about crypto investments and tech innovations, but when Deshawn asked him specific questions, he changed the subject. And he's incredibly interested in Margaret's connection to you, keeps asking about your work, your finances. Interesting. William hadn't instructed Ari to probe for information. Either the actor was improvising or Margaret had put him up to it. That could just be curiosity, William suggested, testing Brielle's conviction. She shook her head firmly. It's not. And there's more. Margaret's spending is out of control. New clothes, exclusive restaurants every night. She's even put a deposit on a vacation home in Vail. Deshawn saw the paperwork when we were at her house. Her money to spend, William said with a shrug. That's just it. Brielle leaned forward, lowering her voice. She told Laurel she's maxed out her credit cards. She's spending like there's no tomorrow because she's convinced your divorce settlement will cover everything. William absorbed this information, adding it to his strategic calculation. I appreciate the heads up. I'm not telling you this to help you in the divorce, Brielle said, misreading his restraint as disinterest. I'm worried about her. This isn't sustainable. She's living in a fantasy world. Sometimes people need to hit bottom before they see reality, William said. Brielle studied him, head slightly tilted. You've changed. You're more, I don't know, present, direct. The William the First knew always seemed to be holding something back. He met her gaze steadily. I'm the same person, just done pretending to be less. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics: Brielle's teaching job, Deshawn's business, neutral ground. As they were finishing, Brielle's phone chimed with a text. She checked it, frowning. Margaret's looking for me, she said. Apparently, there's an emergency photo shoot for her new podcast launch, and she needs authentic family support in the background. Her new podcast. Brielle rolled her eyes. Level Up Your Life with Margaret Vaughn. Laurel's producing it. It's all about escaping limiting relationships and finding your worth. Guess who's the villain of this story? William felt a flicker of genuine amusement. I suppose I should be flattered to be so central to her narrative. Don't joke, Brielle said, suddenly serious. She's trying to destroy you publicly, William. She tells anyone who'll listen that you held her back, controlled her finances, undermined her dreams. The truth will speak for itself, William said calmly. Eventually, after Brielle left, William remained at the cafe, ordering another coffee. His phone buzzed with a text from Marla. Discovery response filed. M's team requesting extension. Judge will grant. Timeline remains on track. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The pieces were in motion: Margaret overextending herself financially, Ari documenting everything, Marla building the legal framework for what would come next. William's next target was already in sight. House Alive, Margaret's newly attained social summit. Time to prepare the ground for her inevitable fall. Mr. Carver, the board is ready for you. William nodded to the assistant, straightening his tie before entering the walnut-paneled boardroom of House Alive. 6 people sat around the table: old money and new technology, the power brokers of Denver's social scene. Thank you for accommodating me, William said, taking the offered seat at the head of the table. He wore a custom suit today, Italian cut, nothing flashy but unmistakably expensive. A calculated shift in his public image. Your investment in our establishment was substantial, said Eleanor Winters, the silver-haired chairwoman. We'd be remiss not to hear your vision. What William had not told anyone, not even Deshawn, was that his anonymous investment in House Alive amounted to a controlling interest. This meeting wasn't a courtesy. It was new ownership addressing the management. House Alive represents something unique in Denver, William began, opening a slim portfolio. Exclusivity with purpose. My concern is that recently, that purpose has become diluted. He slid photographs across the table, social media screenshots showing members, including Margaret and Laurel, using the club as backdrops for product promotions, tagging locations, turning exclusivity into spectacle. This behavior undermines what makes House Alive special, William continued. Privacy, discretion, true connection versus performance. Eleanor's eyebrows raised slightly. You're suggesting a policy change regarding social media? I'm suggesting a comprehensive evaluation of membership standards, William corrected. Starting with a probationary period for new members, during which violations of club etiquette would result in immediate review. That would affect dozens of recent acceptances, objected a younger board member Tech Money, judging by his casual attire. Quality over quantity, William countered. House Alive should be a sanctuary from the very behaviors these influencers promote. The discussion continued for nearly an hour, William methodically addressing concerns, offering concessions where they didn't matter, standing firm on essentials. By meeting's end, the board had approved his proposal. New guidelines would take effect immediately, with a dedicated committee to review violations. William didn't mention that Margaret and Laurel were already under observation. Their every post at the club documented by staff he'd instructed personally. The meeting adjourned. Eleanor approached him privately. You have a particular interest in this issue, she said, more observation than question. William met her knowing gaze. I believe in preserving institutions that matter. She studied him. Your ex-wife has been quite visible since gaining membership. Margaret is passionate about visibility, William acknowledged. It's central to her business model. And yet you, her husband, maintained such a low profile all these years. Curious. William offered a small smile. Former husband. And I prefer substance to spectacle. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. Well, Mr. Carver, I look forward to seeing what else you bring to our little community. It's not often someone surprises me. That evening, William sat in his downtown office, reviewing the day's developments. On one monitor, a live stream showed Margaret and Laurel at House Olive, holding court at a premiere table, recording content for their podcast launch. The club manager hovered nearby, waiting for the perfect moment to approach, that William's phone rang Deshawn. Phase 2 of the Valkyrie launch is complete, his friend reported. Press releases go out tomorrow. Forbes and Wall Street Journal have exclusive interviews scheduled. The ghost is about to become visible. Perfect timing, Williams said. How's our friend Ari performing? Oscar-worthy, Deshawn chuckled. He's got Margaret convinced he's about to close a huge deal. She's already planning a celebration party at House Olive. William watched the live stream as the club manager finally approached Margaret's table. Though there was no audio, the body language told the story, politeness shifting to confusion, then indignation. Margaret gesturing emphatically, Laurel pulling out her phone as if to document the interaction, the manager gently but firmly shaking his head. What's happening? Deshawn asked, hearing William's silence. Margaret just learned about the new social media policy at her favorite club, William said. She's not taking it well. On screen, Margaret and Laurel were gathering their things, faces flushed with anger. Other members watched discreetly, a few with obvious satisfaction. The social hierarchy adjusting in real time. One domino falls, Deshawn observed. It's not about knocking down dominoes, William corrected. It's about revealing the truth beneath them. The next morning, William's strategic revelation began in earnest. Headlines broke across financial and tech publications. Valkyrie Corp emerges from stealth mode. The Pentagon's secret security partner and the ghost architect. William Carver's billion-dollar security empire. Within hours, Margaret's social media exploded with a different narrative than the one she'd been crafting. No longer the story of a woman escaping a limiting relationship, but suddenly the wife who never knew she was married to one of tech's most successful hidden founders. William watched as she pivoted in real time, posts shifting from victim to proud supporter. Always knew his genius would change the world. So proud of all W has accomplished. Hashtag power couple hashtag behind every man too late. The financial disclosures required for Valkyrie Corp's strategic partnerships revealed a company valued at just under $3 billion with William as sole founder and majority shareholder. A fortune hidden in plain sight while Margaret had mocked his little company and basement mindset. That afternoon, William launched the final move in his choreographed revelation. Valkyrie Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to cybersecurity education for underprivileged youth. The press release announced a $50 million initial endowment and partnerships with major universities. As predicted, Margaret immediately attempted to associate herself with the foundation, posting about our commitment to giving back and tagging the foundation's new accounts. The foundation's PR team instructed weeks in advance politely but firmly corrected the public record. The Valkyrie Foundation was established by William Carver as a personal initiative and is not affiliated with any other individuals. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. Margaret was not part of William's real life, had never been part of his real work, and would not be part of his future. By evening, her carefully constructed narrative had completely unraveled. House Olive had revoked her membership for repeated violations of community standards. Laurel's attempted documentation of the ejection had been blocked by security. And Ari, her supposed crypto billionaire boyfriend, had mysteriously disappeared, his social profiles deleted, his Denver apartment emptied overnight. William observed it all from a distance, feeling no triumph or vindication. Only a calm certainty that truth, methodically revealed, was more powerful than any deception. His phone rang Marla Trent. Margaret's attorneys have requested an emergency settlement conference, she said without preamble. They're suddenly very eager to resolve matters quietly. Decline, Williams said. We proceed as planned. Full disclosure, full proceedings. As you wish, Marla replied. Court date is set for next Wednesday. Discovery documents will be delivered to opposing counsel tomorrow morning. 873 pages documenting every disparaging comment, every financial misrepresentation, every infidelity. William gazed out at the Denver skyline, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. Make sure Brielle is insulated from any fallout. She's innocent in all this. Already handled, Marla assured him. We've prepared a separate statement clearing her of any involvement or knowledge. After ending the call, William sent a text to Deshawn. Final phase begins tomorrow. Recommend Margaret look for new representation. The reply came seconds later, already happening. Her lawyer quit an hour ago. Cited irreconcilable differences in case strategy. William allowed himself the smallest smile. The pieces were all in place. Next week, in court, the final moves would play out exactly as he designed. The courthouse steps teamed with reporters a media circus Margaret might once have relished. Today, she pushed through them with her head down, new attorneys struggling to keep pace beside her. Her designer outfit and meticulous makeup couldn't hide the strain of the past week. William arrived separately, Marla Trent at his side. Unlike Margaret, he stopped briefly for questions, offering measured responses about seeking equitable resolution and focusing on the future. The contrast was deliberate calm confidence versus frantic avoidance. Inside, Margaret sat with her legal team, repeatedly checking her phone until the bailiff instructed her to put it away. When William entered, she stared, as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps she was. The William who walked into court bore little resemblance to the man she'd dismissed at Easter brunch, not in appearance, but in presence, in the way others responded to him. All rise. The bailiff called as Judge Eleanor Reeves entered. William had researched her thoroughly. 20 years on the bench, reputation for cutting through theatrics, particular distaste for parties who wasted the court's time. Be seated, Judge Reeves said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the file. Carver versus Von Carver. I've reviewed the pleadings. Can counsel approach? The attorneys conferred briefly at the bench, then returned to their tables. Margaret leaned forward, whispering urgently to her lawyer, who shook his head. Let's proceed efficiently, Judge Reeves announced. Ms. Trent, I understand you have documentation regarding asset division. Marla stood. Yes, Your Honor, and I believe it will simplify these proceedings considerably. She approached with 3 thick binders. These contain the complete financial records of my client's assets, both personal and business-related, along with the prenuptial agreement executed by both parties 5 years ago. Objection. Margaret's attorney rose. Your Honor, my client never signed a prenuptial agreement. Marla smiled thinly. Page 17, tab 3. A DocuSign agreement dated June 12, 5 years ago, with Mrs. Von Carver's electronic signature and verification code. Her email confirmation is attached. The judge examined the documents while Margaret whispered frantically to her lawyer. William observed silently, remembering the day Margaret had signed without reading, too busy planning their wedding to bother with what she'd called boring paperwork. This appears to be in order, Judge Reeves said finally. The prenuptial agreement limits Mrs. Von Carver's claim to assets acquired during the marriage that were explicitly held in joint title. Mr. Edelstein, does your client contest the validity of her signature? Margaret's attorney conferred with her before responding reluctantly. No, Your Honor. However, we contend that Mr. Carver deliberately concealed the extent of his assets during the marriage, which constitutes fraud and renders the prenuptial agreement invalid. An interesting claim, Judge Reeves remarked. Ms. Trent, Marla approached with another binder. Your Honor, tab 1 contains Mrs. Von Carver's social media posts over the past 5 years, specifically highlighting her repeated references to my client's career. She consistently characterized his business as small, unimportant, and beneath her social aspirations. She flipped to mark pages. She referred to his little company and modest achievements while simultaneously building her own brand as a luxury lifestyle expert. If anyone was creating a false impression about Mr. Carver's financial status, It was Mrs. Von Carver herself. William watched Margaret's face flush with anger and embarrassment as Marla continued methodically. Furthermore, Tab 2 contains financial records showing that during the marriage, Mrs. Von Carver spent approximately $1.2 million on personal luxury items, travel, and social memberships, all funded by accounts Mr. Carver provided for household expenses. At no point did she express interest in his business operations beyond their ability to finance her lifestyle. Judge Reeves reviewed the documents, occasionally glancing at Margaret, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Mr. Edelstein, any response?" The judge asked. Margaret's attorney rose, looking less confident. "Your Honor, regardless of past perceptions, the fact remains that Mr. Carver built a multi-billion-dollar company during the marriage. Under Colorado law, business interests developed during the marriage are subject to equitable division." "Ordinarily, yes," Marla interjected. "However, Tab 4 contains the incorporation documents for Valkyrie Corps, dated 3 years before Mr. Carver met Mrs. Von Carver. The company was already valued at $30 million when they married, though kept privately held for security reasons due to government contracts." William remained still as the legal battle unfolded, each point and counterpoint predicted and planned for. He'd spent years building this case, documenting every relevant interaction, securing every vulnerable position. Margaret's attorney made increasingly desperate arguments about hidden assets and deceptive practices, but each was methodically dismantled by Marla's overwhelming documentation. Finally, Judge Reeves held up a hand. "I've heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I find a prenuptial agreement valid and enforceable. Mrs. Von Carver is entitled to retain the assets explicitly held in her name, which include her personal business interests and the joint checking account with a current balance of approximately $24,000. Margaret gasped audibly. Additionally, the judge continued, "Given the clear documentation that the residence was purchased by entitled to Valkyrie Holdings LLC, not Mr. Carver personally, it is not subject to division. Mrs. Von Carver will have 30 days to vacate the property." "This is ridiculous," Margaret burst out, unable to contain herself. "That house is mine. My clothes are there. My life is there." "Mrs. Von Carver," Judge Reeves said sharply, "control yourself or I will find you in contempt. Your personal belongings can be collected under supervision. As for pets," she consulted the file again. "The dog, Theodore, was registered to Mr. Carver before the marriage and will remain with him." Margaret turned to William, tears of fury in her eyes. "You planned this. All of it. You made me look like a fool." William met her gaze calmly. "No, Margaret, you did that yourself. You were nothing without me," she hissed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. William stood, straightening his suit jacket. "No," he said quietly. "I was just nothing around you." He turned and walked down the aisle, Marla at his side, as Margaret's angry sobs echoed behind him. Outside, reporters waited with fresh questions about the verdict, about Valkyrie Corps' newest government contract, about the Foundation's educational initiatives. William answered each with measured precision, no hint of triumph or vindication in his tone. This wasn't victory, it was simply truth, finally brought to light. The aftermath unfolded with mechanical precision, each consequence triggering the next in a cascade William had designed months ago. That Margaret's podcast launch imploded spectacularly when Ari Maddox reappeared not as a crypto billionaire, but as the star of a new streaming documentary called Influence: The Price of Followers. The first episode featured hidden camera footage of Margaret coaching him on how to fake wealth signals and industry knowledge. "It's not about being successful," she told him in the damning clip. "It's about making people believe you're successful. Perception creates reality." The documentary revealed Ari as Andrew Moxley, an actor hired to infiltrate influence culture and expose its artifice. Margaret featured prominently as someone who had built an entire career on manufactured authenticity. William hadn't orchestrated the documentary directly that would have crossed an ethical line he maintained even in pursuit of truth. Instead, he'd simply connected Andrew with legitimate producers already developing the concept, ensuring Margaret would be a natural target for their investigation. Laurel Jenkins faced her own reckoning when a data security breach not from Valkyrie. William made certain of that exposed her company's fraudulent practices, bought followers, fabricated engagement metrics, plagiarized content sold as original creations. Major brands canceled partnerships overnight. Influencer colleagues distanced themselves, and the wellness ecosystem collapsed under scrutiny that in the digital rubble. Betrayal emerged as an unexpected voice of reason. Her thoughtful posts about authenticity and the toxicity of influence culture resonated with audiences exhausted by manufactured perfection. William monitored her rising popularity with quiet approval, directing an anonymous donation to her school's arts program. As she gained traction 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, William sat in his office reviewing the foundation's latest initiative, a scholarship program for promising students from underserved communities. Deshawn entered carrying coffee. "Thought you might want to see this," he said, sliding a tablet across the desk. The screen showed Margaret's latest post, the first in weeks. Gone was the carefully curated luxury backdrop, the professional lighting, the strategic pose. Instead, a simple selfie in what appeared to be a modest apartment. Makeup minimal, expression subdued. "Starting over isn't what I expected," her caption read. "Humility comes at a high price, but maybe it's one I needed to pay." Hashtag authenticity, hashtag viral phallus rising. Williams studied the image, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity. "She's pivoting to a redemption narrative," he observed. "Smart move. Her only viable option. You think she's actually learned anything?" Deshawn asked skeptically. William set the tablet aside. "People rarely change their nature. They just adapt their performance to new circumstances." His phone chimed with a notification from his calendar, a reminder of tomorrow's meeting with the Federal Cybersecurity Council. Another piece moving forward, another truth emerging into light. "What about you?" Deshawn asked, settling into a chair. "Now that the world knows who William Carver really is, what next?" William looked out at the Denver skyline, the same view Margaret had once dismissed as inadequate for her aspirations. From here, he could see the patterns of the city, its flow, its vulnerabilities, its potential. "The same work I've always done," he answered, "but without the shadows." 6 months later, William stood in the atrium of what had once been the Aspen Lounge. The space had been transformed, open workstations replacing exclusive dining areas, collaborative spaces instead of VIP sections. Natural light poured through windows once covered by heavy drapes. "The last of the equipment arrives next week," Deshawn said, consulting his tablet as they walked the floor. "We'll be ready for the first cohort of students by month's end." The Valkyrie Technology Incubator, Williams' latest project, would provide training, mentorship, and seed funding for promising young developers from disadvantaged backgrounds. The symbolism of its location wasn't lost on anyone who knew the story. Marla Trent approached, immaculate as always in a tailored suit. "The press is arriving. Are you ready?" William nodded. In the months since the divorce, he'd given exactly 3 interviews, each focused exclusively on Valkyrie's technology and mission. Today will be different. Today was about closure, that he took his position at the podium, scanning the assembled journalists. Among them, he spotted a familiar face, Betrayal, now a regular contributor to a digital magazine, focusing on tech ethics and authentic communication. She gave him a small wave, which he returned with a nod. "Thank you for coming," William began. "Today marks the official launch of the Valkyrie Technology Incubator, a space where talent and opportunity meet, regardless of background or connections." He outlined the program's specifics, the education pathways, the mentorship structure, the entrepreneurial support. Throughout, he maintained the calm, measured delivery that had become his public signature. Then came the questions. Predictably, the first wasn't about the incubator at all. "Mr. Carver, your ex-wife recently launched a new platform focused on authentic rebuilding. Have you had any contact with her since the divorce?" William had anticipated this. "My focus remains on building, not looking backward. I wish Margaret success in her endeavors." Another reporter pressed, "Some have criticized your handling of the divorce as unnecessarily harsh. Do you regret the public nature of the proceedings?" "Truth isn't harsh," William replied evenly. It simply is. Every fact that came to light during that time was factually accurate and properly documented. And what about reports that you've purchased controlling interests in several Denver tech firms? Critics suggest you're building a monopoly. This question came from a young reporter William didn't recognize, hungry for controversy, looking for cracks in the narrative. Valkyrie invests in promising security technologies, William explained. Our portfolio companies maintain operational independence while benefiting from our expertise and resources. More importantly, he gestured to the space around them. We're investing in people who might otherwise be overlooked, just as I once was. The questions continued, gradually shifting from personal gossip to the substantive work ahead. William answered each with the same deliberate precision that characterized everything he did. No deflection, no exaggeration, no performance, just truth, clearly stated. As the event concluded, William noticed Betrayal waiting nearby. He motioned for her to join him in a quiet corner away from the dispersing crowd. Impressive, she said, gesturing around the space. From exclusive brunch spot to tech incubator in 6 months. Sometimes transformation requires starting from scratch, William replied. Betrayal studied him thoughtfully. You know, Margaret's actually doing better. Her new venture is smaller, but it seems healthier, more authentic. I'm glad to hear that. Are you? She challenged gently. Really? William considered the question seriously. Yes. Genuine success is preferable to hollow performance for everyone. Betrayal nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. Deshawn said you two are expanding the motorcycle customization business. Separate from all this. She gestured vaguely at the Valkyrie banners. Everyone needs something tangible, William said. Something real they can build with their hands. After Betrayal left, William remained in the atrium, watching as the staff prepared for tomorrow's official opening. Deshawn approached, hands in pockets. Ready to go. We've got that Security Council briefing in an hour. William nodded, taking a final look around the space. Here, where Margaret had delivered her cutting dismissal, new possibilities would now take root. Not as revenge or justice, but as the natural consequence of truth replacing pretense. Together, they walked out into the Denver afternoon. The spring air carried the same promise it had a year ago, but everything else had changed. William had emerged from the shadows he'd built around himself, not just from Margaret, but from the world. The strategic silence that had defined him for so long had served its purpose and now yielded to a different kind of strength. That evening, alone on the rooftop terrace of his downtown building, William stood with a glass of whiskey, looking out over the city lights. The view reminded him of nights in the desert years ago, stars providing illumination, clarity in darkness. His phone buzzed with a text from Marla, final paperwork filed. Margaret's settlement statement released. Closing the books on Carver v. Von Carver, William slipped the phone back into his pocket without replying. Some endings required no acknowledgement, just as some beginnings needed no announcement. The truth simply was, and would remain, regardless of who witnessed it. He raised his glass to the Denver skyline, not in toast or celebration, but in quiet recognition of the path forward. A man forged in silence, now untouchable in his power, but guided by the same principle that had sustained him through war, through building, through deception and revelation. Truth, methodically pursued, would always prevail.